Hello, it's me, VioSpsych here again. I decided to make this video and just, kind of fill in the time because I've been actually trying to make this video all month. But anyway, I have no script for this video, by the way, so I'm just kind of going all in. So trying not be get too confused by the way I speak. So where should I start? Well, of course, like I said, you are probably not even thinking about this right now, but you know, recently, since this decade has, of course, started, my thoughts were looking back, and I was just like, man, just look at all the, just ways my personality has kind of changed over the years and how it hasn't changed at the same time, because I'm still me, of course, but to say the least, yeah, a lot has changed in the past 10 years. I mean, let's say, where should I start? Again, I mean, just like I had no idea that, when I was 20 years old, that I would be getting a love doll for one, and that I would be this love doll connoisseur, to say the least. And, that's just funny how things change sometimes. It was just funny. In fact, just even a year ago, or it was actually over a year ago now, actually, but, I was thinking about, when I first got this doll that I was going to put her up on a video soon after I got her. And that's what I did at least a month or two after I got her. And I was just thinking, like, before I did it, I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Because I was a bit nervous, to be frank. But, I did it. And of course, there's a little bit of negativity towards it. But, thankfully, I don't care too much about what people think of me. And of course, what I mean by that is I'm not really worried about my lifestyle. I don't have any shame of what I do with my life. There's nothing wrong with what I do. I'm not necessarily hurting anybody or doing anything wrong per se in any way. I mean, of course, people might not do the same things that I do. Maybe somebody won't pay this much money to get a love doll from Real Doll like I did. And, in a sense, who can blame them? But, those people aren't me and I'm not them. So who really cares? To say the least. But, even looking back, let's go even 20 years back, which is before 9/11. And, an event that was so big that to this day, people still talk about it, just like I'm talking about it right now. So almost 20 years ago, when 9/11 happened on September 11th, I forget what time it was, but I was in school, and I still even remember what I was wearing at the time. And people were outside of the school, just for anybody that is either too young to know this or remember this, but they're all outside. They're like, the towers are hit, the towers hit, turn on the TV. And I'm just like, wait a minute, what the fuck are they talking about? The towers are hit. What the heck? Because I didn't even know what the towers were at the time. I didn't even know what they were at the time. But then they turned on the TV, it was live. And on the TV, I saw that the second plane hit, soon after they turned on the TV. And yeah, it was pretty big. And I remember soon after that, I mean, everybody in my town was like on a frickin' manhunt. I'm not even kidding. It's like we're just all on a frickin' manhunt for Osama bin Laden at the time. And every redneck had a bumper sticker on their truck that said, if you find Osama bin Laden, kill him. And it had, of course, a picture of his face on it, just in case you didn't know what Osama bin Laden didn't look like. And everything from the 1990s, from then on, was gone. Right then and there when 9/11 happened. Everything from the 90s that moved over into the early 2000s that instantly was just gone. All the entertainments and everything, the quotes, almost everything pretty much 99% was gone. Completely changed throughout the rest of the decade. And then after 2 decades later, I would say at least 15 years later, people started missing the 90s. In about 2015, 2015, people really then, I would say, about really started missing the 90s, especially since we had, man, there's also the recession and everything. I mean, geez, there was a recession, 2007, 8, and then on for a few years. People are still, I mean, again, to this day, people are still having to struggle through what they went through, in the recession. It's just ridiculous that people to this day are still struggling since the recession, and it almost looks like we could have another one here soon. I mean, Jesus. And then, but again, of course, soon after 9/11, I was on the whole, manhunt for Osama bin Laden and terrorist. And it was 9/11 this and 9/11 that for at least a few years. I remember the first year it happened, I couldn't even look at a TV without seeing some kind of mention about 9/11. I mean, this really was big almost 20 years ago when it came to 9/11. But then moving on, by the way, a lot of movies sucked that decade. They really did. But then moving on to this decade, it's like people have kind of started to try and focus on their entertainment again, and now we're actually seeing good movies coming out of theaters now, and shit actually happens again that people take notice of, and it's just funny. Man, like the 2000 decade, the decade before last was just fucking boring. It was just fucking boring. But as far as my change goes, I mean, 20 years ago, I was just another small town kid, just a regular small town kid that thought the same thing that a lot of other small town kids used to think. And sometimes I still meet people that still think the same way that I used to 20 years ago. Because that's just how Iowa is. And that's just how people are sometimes. They isolate, not just Iowa. There's rednecks pretty much everywhere, but people just isolate themselves, and like sometimes 10 years later, they haven't really changed much. But my life, I mean, I've been in regular school, I've also been homeschooled, and then I've been back to regular school and then out of high school again because I was 18 and I graduated sort of, got out of high school and was glad that I was out of high school, by the way. I was just glad. Still glad to this day, by the way. And like, yeah, I gotta say, even myself, I am the same in a lot of ways, but I've changed in a lot of ways myself. I mean, like I said, again, I did not think that I would be a Love Doll connoisseur, by the way, which I always like to joke about. It's because looking back, it is pretty funny. But also, let me just like this street shirt in memory of my social life. I mean, 15 years ago, I was still kind of in the mindset that if you had to have fun, you had to go out to have fun. But 15 years later to now, I could give a flying fuck about going out all the time. Besides, I mean, what's there to fucking do in Iowa anyway? I would have quite literally, most of the time, have to move out of state just to find something to fucking do. which of course could take me more than a few hours. So what's the fucking use? Besides, I also don't really care for long trips, but I think you get the point. Of course, my mindset nowadays on that note is just simply you don't always have to go out to have fun. You seriously don't. I mean, yes, sometimes you have to go out to do things and maybe occasionally have fun. But, this is 2020. This is not 2000. This isn't 1990 anymore. This is 2020. And we, of course, need to start acting like it, in my opinion. We need to move on and grow up. And of course, my opinion nowadays, if you just stay stuck in the past, like a lot of people here do in Iowa, it just makes it worse, in my opinion. It seriously does. I used to be kind of more of a Republican, but now you could say I'm a bit more of a Democrat, to say the least. Because you can't try to stay in the past when everything around you is changing. You seriously can't. That's just not how life works. We are in a country that changes. That we don't live in Iraq or places like that try to keep everything the same quite literally for the past 10,000 years. We are not in a country like that. Here in this country, things change for better or worse, in your opinion. Of course, lots of people ask me, or say things like, things were better in the past. And I mean, that's a very relative thing, in my opinion, when it comes to change. I mean, sure, in the 90s, when I was a kid, it was a lot easier to get a job with less hours. I mean, not in the 90s, you didn't have to work so many hours. I mean, nowadays, if you don't work in a career, you were on average working time and a half more than you used to in the 90s. And the fact that the cost of living has been jacked way up since the 90s. So, and our economy is still trying to keep up with the change in revenue. Like to this day, lots of people they're still struggling. And again, like I said, there's on average having to work time and a half just to make ends meet. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is definitely not what it was like in the 1970s with my father when he was going to college and so on and so forth. I mean, yeah, it's just ridiculous. Or wait, he went to college after that, actually. Never mind. But I think you get my point. But in the 1970s, when my father was younger, you could quite literally pay for a place and go to college at the same time and be able to afford all that. Nowadays, if you go to college, there's a big chance that you're with your parents and you're struggling to pay off the loans. I mean, when my father was a kid and when I was a kid and when your kids are now a kid now, it is a completely different ball game, to say the least. And because of that, our perspectives change. Again, if we just stay stuck in the past and our mindset just never moves on, then it's just going to be worse on you. I hate to say it, but it seriously is just going to be worse on you, to say the least. But yeah. With that being said, it's about 15 minutes now, and I guess I'll let you guys go. There's probably some more things that I would say to you guys, but I think you get the gist of it. But yeah, just try to kind of, bring in the experience, bring in new knowledge, because God knows knowledge doesn't stop coming in just because guys graduated from high school. It never stops. We always have to keep on learning. Again, don't just stay stuck in the past because it's just going to be a lot harder on you. That being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.